I'm Ann Dart.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
As we get ready to release this, we have just been informed of a very sad event. The author Sheila Connolly has passed away in Ireland. She was a very prolific author. Most of her books were cozies. She had the Orchard Mystery series, the Museum series, the County Cork series, and the Relatively Dead mystery series. She is going to be sorely missed in the writing community, and our condolences go to her family.
Hello, and welcome to episode 111 of It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club. We have another Agatha nominee interview day. We have Gabriel Valjan, who is nominated for Best Historical Novel. And then we have an interview with Connie, who has been nominated for Best First.
Gabriel Valjan lives in Boston's South End, where he enjoys the local restaurants. He is the author of 2 series, Roma and Company Files, with Winter Goose Publishing. The Naming Game, the second book in the Company Files series, was nominated for an Agatha Award for Best Historical Mystery in 2019. Dirty Old Town is the first in the Shane McCleary series for Level Best Books. He is a lifetime member of Sisters in Crime. The Naming Game tells the story of Jack Marshall, a CIA officer who was really hoping to enjoy his vacation from work in D.C. and to spend some time in Malibu with his family. But a call from LAPD's Chief William Parker changed everything. Not only was scriptwriter Charles Loew murdered, Jack has reason to believe FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover was somehow connected to the homicide. The second book in the Company File series, The Naming Game, is a historical noir that draws you into the familiar world of Hollywood names and reveals secrets from a forgotten era of Los Angeles history you never knew existed.
I would like to welcome Gabriel Valjan to the podcast. He is an Agatha nominee for the Best Historical Mystery, The Naming Game. Welcome, Gabriel.
Thank you for having me.
There are many historical fiction books written during World War II era. What drew you to tackle post-World War II?
It's a time period that fascinated me because when you look at American history, right after World War II, the United States really became a world power. Before that, it was primarily the UK, Great Britain. I think because of World War II, we were the only nation really to walk away from the conflict with a lot of our infrastructure in place. Of course, we had to reposition our entire economy to war effort. Unlike Europe, we didn't have bombed out cities. We had, to our advantage, a President, FDR, who that time had passed right as the war concluded, but many of the policy allowed GIs to get educated. We actually were able to hit and have a profitable economy, and as I said, became a world power after the war. So I found that time period interesting because all the industries ramped up, including the entertainment industry, which the Naming Game is centered around.
The Naming Game pits the corruption of J. Edgar Hoover and the xenophobia of McCarthyism against Golden Age Hollywood. While this might seem to be a well-known subject, were there any challenges in your research?
Yes, there were. You are correct that it's a very rich field. There's been many books written on it by thrillers, espionage type of stories. What I was particularly interested in, and I thought that Novick really explored, was how the studios, and in this particular novel, The Naming Game, I focus on Warner Brothers. I did that for a reason because Jack Warner, like many of the moguls, was involved in that first wave of participating with Senator McCarthy. What I found interesting was that the studios, particularly Warner Brothers, they wanted to be interpreted as patriotic. So when they had screenwriters that were identified as being communist or sympathetic to communism, they didn't exactly fire them. What they did was they essentially exiled them so that they wouldn't be seen on the studio lot. They still had these writers writing movies for them, but they had to change their names so that nobody would know that it was the same writer that was writing these screenplays. I think the best example that most listeners would know would be Dalton Trumbo. He wrote numerous movies, and it wasn't until the late Kirk Douglas acknowledged him for the screenplay for Spartacus that actually, in many ways, broke the spell or broke the curse of having that black eye of being supposedly sympathetic communism. I should mention that a lot of writers, there were some that were communists, but a lot of them just dabbled. It was in the 1930s, a lot of writers were intellectuals and they were exploring ideas. A lot of them never committed to communism or joined the club, so to speak. Studios like Warner Brothers carried on business as usual, so they put these guys in out-of-the-way towns or sent them out of the country, and they would send couriers, pick up screenplays, and pay them more or less below the table at a public eye, because the studios did not want to be seen as unpatriotic, but they still wanted to have movies cranked out.
I guess that is the creative means they found to keep their industry moving.
Correct. I do want to say, though, that there are other elements of research that I had to do. I'm writing about Los Angeles in the late 40s, early 50s, so a lot of the research I had to do was to make sure that I had street names right, the highways right. A lot of those streets and highways changed names, were rerouted. If you look at something like Malibu, for example, Malibu was an artist colony at the time, literally was cut off from everything else, and you had to go out of your way to get there. The reason I mention Malibu is my character lives there. It's a little out of the way, cul-de-sac that he lives in. The research that is involved is also knowing who the writers were that were blacklisted, what films they did, and discovering that some films who you thought wrote it didn't actually write it, but it was somebody else. You see some scripts, their names changed or they were edited. A good example of that is the movie Casablanca. Nobody on that set, none of the actors knew how that movie was going to end because they were getting the script as it was being written. There were writers that were blacklisted that helped contribute to that script.
Interesting.
They managed to find this information.
A lot of it, for the one aspect of urban Los Angeles, I consulted a lot of books that had maps. There are other authors out there that are historians, usually associated with USC or UCLA, that discussed layout of the city for stuff related directly to blacklisted writers. There was 2 books that I consulted. One of them is called The Red Scare, which I do not believe it exists in Kindle. It may have just only recently been Kindle. It's a collection of interviews with people on all sides of the Red Scare. There was interviews with cops, there was interviews with investigators, there were interviews with actors and screenwriters, the players from all sides. There were people that genuinely believed that there were communists. If we're looking at this 60 years later, we have the gift of hindsight to see that some of it was not true or false information. Of course, things didn't move at the speed of light. There's no internet. That's why I mentioned earlier that there was always that point of personal contact. You had a blacklisted writer writing for you. You had to courier it. Somebody had to show up, bring it back to the studio. Of course, that person's probably showing up with a paycheck, most likely cash, so that it couldn't be traced. A good example of the courier system, although he wasn't a communist, was that's how they worked with Raymond Chandler. He had his apartment, he had multiple apartments, and he had a chauffeur that used to drive his scripts back and forth. He worked on Double Down.
That's one of my favorite films. Have you seen the documentary, The Hollywood 10?
I have not. I have it bookmarked. I was aware of it. Again, a fascinating group of people. I read about them. I haven't seen the documentary.
It's only 15 minutes long, but it's well worth watching.
Again, when the scandal first hit, and by scandal I mean when McCarthy got up in front of a women's club, I believe it was either in Wisconsin or Kentucky, I could be wrong about that, but McCarthy essentially announced to a women's club, like a Rotary Club or something, that he had a list of known communists. He never produced it. No one ever saw the names. He just went purely on that rumor that he had this name. He waved a piece of paper in the air, and everybody believed him, and then things just escalated from there. With the Hollywood 10, I'm hoping I'm presenting this accurately. They can't speak for themselves now, but a lot of them cited First Amendment. There were constitutional issues. There were a lot of debates that I think that came out of that era that I think that are still relevant today. First right, freedom of speech, also whistleblower laws. There are issues and subjects that come out of that we're still dealing with today.
You could just change the time frame.
The technology changed. That's all that I think matters. But the damage is still there. There are people whose lives were totally changed, if not destroyed. It affected their children. It affected them doing business, getting jobs, their wives. It was pretty nasty.
Do you have a website that our listeners can go check out your book and learn more about you?
I have a website, www.gabriel.com. I have a WordPress blog called Gabriel's Wharf, and there I have some essays. I have things that I hope are helpful to other people in the crime fiction community. For example, right now I have a list of eligible Anthony titles, people who want to know what's eligible and want to vote. Now more so because a lot of the conferences have been canceled. I think, at least I know with Malice, the voting will be done online and then the results published, I assume, online also. So blog post and a website.
Well, even though Malice has been canceled, they're still going to present the awards. How do you plan to celebrate if you win?
I probably will have a nice dinner. I'm not very big on champagne, but I'll find something good to drink and enjoy the moment. Really been an honor to be nominated. Never saw it coming. I literally was in bed at night at 3 a.m. Usually I have insomnia around that hour. I looked at my phone and I saw I had an email, and the email had told me that I had been nominated and nearly fell out of bed. Great group of people that I've been nominated with, as I'm sure you know, Reese Bowen, Lori Chandler, Edith Maxwell. I've not met Reese in person, but the other nominees I know personally. I feel like I'm in great company.
You definitely are.
Are you working on any new books?
Yes, I am. Right now I am editing the second book in another series, and that series is called the Shane Cleary series. It's set in 1970s Boston. The first book in the series came out in January, Level Best Books. The title is Dirty Old Town, a fast, brisk read. You meet Shane, who used to work for the Boston Police Department. Now he's a PI. He's broke. He needs money. He's alone. He has a cat. Job offer that comes to him is actually from his first love, his high school sweetheart, who is now married, and Shane, of course, carries a little bit of a torch for her and can't stand her husband. He believes he's being black, so Shane takes a job. I hope readers get to enjoy a view of Boston in the 1970s. See how Shane solves the case. The second book, which I'm editing, which I hope will come out this January, is called Symphony Road, and it deals with a arson case. Shane trying to help somebody who's falsely accused of arson. That's what I'm working on now.
Boston in the 70s was a hopping place, especially crime-wise.
Yes. One of the things I did different here was I wrote about the South End, where I live. Usually crime writers from the 70s, like Robert Parker, they deal with Cambridge and Boston proper. I'm not aware of anybody that was doing a lot about the South End. Like you said, it was an interesting neighborhood. It was multicultural. It was diverse. There was jazz clubs. There were all kinds of bars, working class. There was the hospital that was nearby, so you had nurses living here. You had musicians living here. Mixed neighborhood. Also, at that time, it was up and down with crime. You're right about that. Boston was an interesting town during the 70s.
Are you going to feature a certain group there, or is it just going to be multicultural and a mix?
The series does try to be accurate to the times. So I have an African-American couple who are Shane's friends. I have two friends of his that are gay. I'm trying to show people in the books different slice of life. While also at the same time, I hope this goes without saying, but Boston in the 1970s period was not politically correct.
No, it wasn't.
Not by any stretch of the imagination. So you deal with issues, feminism, how women are treated, not well, obviously. You also see racism, homophobia. The 70s, you saw other cases in the public eye, like Serpico, because police were a little shady, or could be. There were scandals. Shane is living in a neighborhood that was affected by the busing situation, which is not South Boston. He's in the South End. And he deals with the fact that Boston was one of the last cities in the United States to deal with racial desegregation in the school system.
When can we expect the new installment of that series?
Dirty Old Town's already out. That's available on Amazon. So that came out in January. The idea was that each book in that series would come out each January. I hope that stays the course. I don't know, given everything that's going on in publishing. The date might get pushed. If it holds to the date, you should see a Symphony Road in middle of January.
Very good.
Wonderful. Well, I'm definitely going to be checking out that series. That sounds fascinating.
Thank you.
Well, Gabriel, we thank you for joining us today. We hope you stay safe and well,
Yes.
that this doesn't last too long and we'll be able to get outside again.
Will you be attending, Mellis?
Oh, yes.
We were looking forward to it. We were looking forward to getting